Clara Whitmore did not cry when they laughed at her. She had stopped crying years ago. But standing in the middle of Red Willow Creek's only dry goods store holding a bolt of cotton fabric against her chest, while three women whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, she felt something crack inside her. Something she had spent a long time building back up brick by careful brick. "Reckon she's buying more fabric to let out another dress," the first woman said. "Either that or she's making curtains," the second answered. The third laughed. If this story speaks to you, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's journey all the way to the end. And drop a comment. Tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Clara Whitmore did not cry when they laughed at her. She had stopped crying years ago. But standing in the middle of Red Willow Creek's only dry goods store, holding a bolt of cotton fabric against her chest, while three women whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, she felt something crack inside her. Something she had spent a long time building back up brick by careful brick. "Reckon she's buying more fabric to let out another dress," the first woman said. "Either that or she's making curtains," the second one answered. The third one laughed, pressing her gloved hand over her mouth, as though that made it polite. Clara set the bolt of fabric down on the counter. She set it down slowly, deliberately, the way a woman sets something down when she wants her hands to stop shaking before anyone notices they are shaking. She paid the storekeeper without meeting his eyes. She carried her package out through the front door and into the blinding Texas summer heat, and she did not look back. She never looked back. That was the rule she had made for herself a long time ago. You walk forward. You keep your head up. You do not let them see that anything they say reaches you, because the moment they know it reaches you, they never stop. She had been following that rule since she was 16 years old. She followed it all the way down Main Street, past the barber shop, where men sat in chairs outside, and watched her go past the bank where Raymond Pratt stood in the doorway and smiled his cold smile at her, past the church where Reverend Hollis was sweeping his front steps and had the decency at least to nod. She followed it all the way to her bakery. The sign above the door read Whitmore's in clean painted letters. She had painted it herself 3 years ago, standing on a ladder on a Tuesday morning, while half the town walked past and said nothing. The bakery was hers. Every board in the floor, every tin pan on the shelf, every sack of flour in the back room, all of it earned by her own 2 hands, and nobody else's. She unlocked the door. She stepped inside. She set her package down on the work table, and then, and only then, alone in the quiet of her own place, she let herself breathe. She pressed both palms flat against the work table, eyes closed, listening to the sound of nothing, the most peaceful sound she knew. Then she tied on her apron and went to work. The bread was already rising by the time she heard the knock. It was a strange knock, 3 times deliberate, a little hesitant, the kind of knock a man makes when he is not sure if he is at the right door, but he is going to commit to it anyway. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and came around the work table. She opened the door. The man standing on her front step was tall. Not in the exaggerated way men sometimes appeared tall when they were wearing their boots and their pride. Genuinely tall, wide-shouldered, with the kind of build that came from years of real work and not from showing off. His hat was brown with road dust on the brim. His coat had seen weather. His eyes when he looked at her were a clear, steady gray that didn't flinch and didn't dart away, which was unusual enough that she noticed it immediately. He held his hat in both hands. "Miss Clara Whitmore." "That's me," she said. "My name is William Carter." A pause. He turned his hat once in his hands, just once. "Your brother sent me." Clara stared at him. "My brother," she repeated. "Yes, ma'am." "Thomas sent you." "Yes, ma'am." She leaned one hand against the doorframe. "Thomas lives in Abilene. He hasn't written me in 4 months, and he hasn't visited in 2 years, and the last time I saw him, he borrowed $11 he has never paid back." She looked at William Carter very steadily. "What exactly did Thomas send you here to do?" William looked down at his hat. He looked back up at her. He had the expression of a man who had rehearsed something on the ride over and was now discovering that the rehearsed version was not going to hold up. He said, William stopped, started again. He said you were alone out here, that you had been alone a long time, that you were a good woman and a hard-working one, and you deserved better than what this town gave you. Another pause. He said if I was looking for a place to put down roots, and a person worth building something with, I ought to come find you. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight to it. Clara looked at this man, this tall, dusty, serious-faced stranger standing on her front step, holding his hat like a man in a church pew, and she felt approximately 7 different things at once. Most of them things she had no interest in feeling. "He told you to come court me," she said flatly. "He told me to come meet you," William said. "What happened after that he left to us." "There is no us," Clara said. "There is you, who I have never met, and there is me, who you have never met, and there is my brother, who apparently has decided that the best way to help his sister is to send a stranger to her door without so much as a letter of warning." She straightened up. "I appreciate you riding out here, Mr. Carter. I genuinely do. But I think you've had a wasted trip." She began to close the door. "Miss Whitmore." She stopped. "I know it's a strange way to start," he said. "I know it doesn't make much sense from where you're standing, but I rode 4 days to get here, and I'd be grateful if you'd let me explain myself before you close that door. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes." Clara looked at him through the narrowing gap. He didn't move. He didn't push forward. He stood exactly where he was and waited, which was not what she had expected. She opened the door again. "5 minutes," she said. "And then I have bread to check." He talked for closer to 20, sitting at the work table, with a cup of coffee she gave him, because it would have been unkind not to his hat on the table beside him, and his hands wrapped around the mug. He told her about his family's ranch in East Texas, about how his father had built it up from nothing over 30 years, and how when the old man died, there had been debts nobody knew about, debts that swallowed the land whole inside of 6 months. About how William had spent the last 4 years working other men's cattle and sleeping in other men's bunkhouses, putting money aside, looking for the right place and the right moment to start over. "And my brother told you Red Willow Creek was the right place," Clara said. "He told me you were," William said. She looked at him. "You don't know me." "No, ma'am. That's why I came." "That doesn't make any sense." "Maybe not." He turned his mug in his hands. "But Thomas talked about you for 2 hours one night over a campfire. I was just passing through Abilene. We'd done a cattle drive together. He talked about your bread and the way you always knew when somebody was having a hard time before they said it out loud, and how you'd lost your mother young and ran the household yourself from the time you were 14, and how he felt bad that he'd let distance grow between you because you were the best person he knew and you were out here alone." William set his mug down. He cried a little, felt embarrassed about it, but he cried. Clara was quiet. She had not known Thomas cried. "I'm not here to rescue you," William said, and his voice was level and plain when he said it. No softness to make it go down easier, just the words straight. "I'm not looking for somebody to take care of. I'm looking for somebody to build alongside. There's a difference." He picked his hat up from the table. "I know this is an unusual introduction. I know you have no reason to trust me. I'm just asking you to let me stay in town a while, work, show you I'm worth knowing, and if after a month you feel differently, I'll move on, and we'll both pretend this conversation never happened." Clara folded her hands on the table. "You'll stay in town," she said. "Already spoke to Harlan at the livery. He's got bunkhouse space and needs a hand. And you expect nothing from me. I expect the same thing you'd give anyone in this town. Courtesy, honesty, that's it." She looked at him for a long moment, this stranger with his road-dusted hat, and his clear gray eyes, and his peculiar, old-fashioned, slightly stubborn sincerity. "All right, Mr. Carter," she said finally. 1 month. He nodded. "Thank you, Miss Whitmore." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I make no promises." "No, ma'am," he said. "Neither do I." He stood up, settled his hat back on his head, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. "That bread smells real good," he said. "It's not for you," she told him. He smiled, just a small one quick, and went out into the heat. Clara stood at her work table for a long moment after he left. Then she went and checked her bread. It was fine. Perfect, actually. She pulled the loaves from the oven and set them to cool on the rack, and stood over them with her arms crossed, looking at nothing in particular. Thomas had cried. That was the part she kept coming back to. Word got around town the way it always did in Red Willow Creek immediately. By morning, everyone knew there was a cowboy at Harlan's livery who had ridden in specifically on account of Clara Whitmore. This passed through town like a stone through still water, and the ripples were not kind ones. "You hear about the Whitmore woman?" Dottie Pierce said over the fence to her neighbor, loud enough that both their husbands could hear. "Some cowboy came looking for her, like she put out an advertisement." "Poor man doesn't know what he rode into," her neighbor replied. In the barber shop, one of the Caldwell ranch hands leaned back in his chair and said, "Carter's a fool, or he's blind, one of the two." "Or both," somebody else said. At the general store, Mrs. Holt shook her head. "I feel for her, I do. But you know how it ends. Man like that, soon as he gets a good look at the situation, he'll move on." Only Reverend Hollis, sweeping his steps, kept his thoughts to himself. Clara knew all of this because small towns are made of thin walls and loud voices, and she had spent 25 years learning to hear things people assumed she couldn't hear. She heard them. She filed them away behind the same wall where she kept everything else, the things that would hurt her if she let them. She went on baking her bread. She went on mending dresses. She went on doing exactly what she had always done, because the work was real, even when everything else was not. William Carter came by the bakery on the third day. He didn't knock this time. He came around to the side window where she was working and spoke through the screen. "Miss Whitmore, morning." She looked up from the dough she was working. "Mr. Carter?" "Harlan's sending me out to the Caldwell spread to look at some horses this afternoon. He said you'd know the road. Take Main Street to the North Fork. Left at the dead cottonwood. Can't miss the gate. Thank you." A pause. "You make those rolls every day?" She looked at the pan of rolls cooling on the rack. "Most days." "They were gone before noon yesterday. I came by too late." "They usually are." "What time do they come out of the oven?" She looked at him through the screen. 7 in the morning, Mr. Carter, like everything else." "I'll be here at 7 then," he said. "You'll need a nickel," she told him. "I've got a nickel," he said, and tipped his hat at her and walked away. She watched him go through the screen, his broad shoulders and his easy, unhurried walk, and she turned back to her dough and worked it a little harder than strictly necessary. He was there at 7 the next morning, hat in hand, nickel ready. She sold him 2 rolls. He ate one on the front step and carried the other one with him to work. This became, without either of them officially agreeing to it, a pattern. On the 6th day, Raymond Pratt came into the bakery. Raymond Pratt was Red Willow Creek's banker, its wealthiest man, and the person most responsible for setting the social temperature of the town, which he did with the precision and pleasure of a man who understood exactly how much power that gave him. He was not old 40 perhaps, and he was not ugly, and he knew both of these things in the way a person knows something they intend to use. He came in while Clara was serving 2 other customers. He waited, which was unusual for him. He bought a pie, which was also unusual. He stood at the counter while she wrapped it. "Heard you have a suitor," he said pleasantly. "Heard all sorts of things," Clara said, folding the paper. "Carter's a decent enough man. Worked a couple of drives I know of. Honest." Raymond accepted the wrapped pie. "Though I do wonder what he's really after. Man doesn't ride 4 days for no reason." "Most people have reasons for what they do," Clara said. Raymond smiled. "Most people do. You be careful, Clara. Men get lonely on the trail. They see something that looks like comfort, and they ride toward it. Doesn't always mean what a woman hopes it means." He walked out. Clara stood at her counter and breathed slowly until the color left her face. That evening, without planning to, she told William about it. They were on the bench outside the bakery. He had stayed late helping her carry flour sacks from the delivery wagon, which she had not asked him to do, but had not refused, and the sun was getting low and orange over the rooftops, and she said without quite meaning to, "Raymond Pratt came in today." William was quiet for a moment. "What did he want?" "To buy a pie," she said. "And to let me know he thought you were probably using me." William turned his hat in his hands. He did that when he was thinking. "What do you think?" he said. Clara looked at the street. "I think I've been warned about things my whole life by people who turned out to be wrong. Doesn't mean the warnings are always wrong." She paused. "It doesn't mean they're always right either." "That's a fair way to think about it," he said. "I'm a fair person." "I know you are." She looked at him. "You keep saying things like that, like you know me. You've been here 6 days. 6 days is enough to see some things," he said. "I've seen you turn away 3 people this week without charging them because you could tell they were short. I've seen you stay an extra hour fixing a dress for the Miller girl because the girl's wedding is Saturday and she was crying in your shop. I've seen you carry things that are too heavy for one person because you'd rather hurt your back than ask for help." He looked at her directly. 6 days is enough to see that." Clara was quiet. "I'm not using you, Miss Whitmore," he said, plain and simple. "I don't know yet what we'll be to each other, but I'm not using you." She looked away back at the street where the last light was going gold on the dust. "All right," she said. "Just that. All right." Oh. On the 9th day, Nathan Caldwell rode into town. Nathan Caldwell was the largest landowner in the county, which in 1882 in West Texas meant he was very nearly a small god. He owned 40,000 acres, 3 wells, a cattle operation that employed 60 men, and the confidence of a person who had never once in his adult life been told no by anyone who could make it stick. He was 45, lean and silver-haired and handsome in the way certain dangerous things are handsome, and he had known Clara Whitmore for 10 years, and had never once in those 10 years spoken to her like she was a full person. He came into the bakery on a Tuesday. "Clara," he said without the miss. The way a man says the name of someone he has already decided doesn't require the courtesy. "Mr. Caldwell," she said. "What can I get you?" "Nothing today." He walked slowly around the bakery, looking at her shelves. "I hear you've taken up with William Carter?" "Mr. Carter is new to town," Clara said. "He comes in for rolls in the morning." "That's not what I hear." Nathan Caldwell turned to face her, leaning one elbow on the counter. "I hear he's been spending his evenings here, helping out, getting comfortable." "Men are welcome to buy rolls," Clara said. Nathan smiled without warmth. "Clara, you're a sensible woman. You've always been a sensible woman, I'll give you that. And a sensible woman knows her situation." He spread his hands flat on the counter. "Carter is a drifter. Broke, no land, no cattle, nothing to his name. He's not a man who can offer you anything real. And you—" He paused, and the pause had something terrible in it, something that said he was choosing his next words because he thought he was being kind, rather than cruel. "You deserve realistic expectations." Clara set down the cloth she'd been holding. "Realistic expectations," she repeated. "I mean no offense." "No," she said. "Men never do when they're telling a woman what she's worth." She looked at him steadily. "Is there something I can help you with today, Mr. Caldwell? I've got work to do." Nathan Caldwell studied her for a moment. Something shifted in his face, not embarrassment, nothing that honest. More like recalibration. "Just being neighborly," he said. "Then good day," Clara said. He straightened, nodded once, the kind of nod that meant he had made a note of this conversation for later use, and walked out. Clara stood behind her counter until she heard his horse leave. Then she put both hands on the counter, the way she had that first day with the fabric, and she breathed. She didn't tell William about Nathan's visit. She didn't tell him because she knew exactly what he would do. He would be angry. He would feel like he had to respond, and she did not want anyone fighting a battle. She had been fighting herself for 20 years. This was her town, her street, her war. But William found out anyway. Someone told someone else who mentioned it to Harlan, and Harlan said something to William while they were working. And William came by the bakery that evening with a jaw that was a little too set and eyes that were a little too careful. "I heard about Caldwell," he said. "Did you?" Clara said, not looking up from the counter. "You should have told me." "It wasn't your business." "Clara, it wasn't your business, Mr. Carter." She looked up. "I have been dealing with Nathan Caldwell for 10 years. I have been dealing with every version of Nathan Caldwell in this town for my entire life. I don't need you to ride in and make it worse by getting into a fight over my honor. I don't need—" She stopped. She made herself stop. "I appreciate your concern," she said more quietly. "I do. But I am not something that needs defending. I am a person who needs to be left to handle her own affairs." William stood very still. "I know you're not something that needs defending," he said after a moment. "I know that. You've made it plenty clear you can take care of yourself." Then, "But there's a difference," he said, "between being able to take care of yourself and having to take care of yourself alone every single time." He looked at her. "I'm not trying to fight your battles, Clara. I'm trying to stand beside you while you fight them. There's a difference." Clara looked at him. He didn't look away. Something moved in her chest, quiet and careful, like a small flame in wind that isn't sure yet whether it's going to hold. "All right," she said for the second time. William nodded. He put his hat on. "Good night, Miss Whitmore." "Good night, Mr. Carter," she said. He went out. She listened to his boots on the boards outside. Then she blew out the lamp and sat in the dark for a while, thinking about fire and wind and things that are afraid to hold. The second week became the third. The pattern settled between them like it had always been there, waiting for them to find it. 7 o'clock rolls. Noon sometimes, if he wasn't out at the ranches. Evening often, he developed the habit of coming by after supper, not to stay long, just long enough to sit on the bench outside and talk for half an hour while the town cooled down around them. She told him about the families she'd grown up with here. He told her about the land in East Texas, what it smelled like after rain, what it felt like to lose something your father built with his hands. She found out he could fix a wagon wheel without making it an event, that he was quiet in a useful way, not a sulking way, that he had opinions about cattle breeding that were sharp and well-reasoned, and that he held them lightly without needing to win an argument. She found out that when he laughed, which wasn't often, but when he did, it changed his whole face. She was careful about all of this. She cataloged it and set it aside and was very deliberate about not thinking too much about it. She had made the mistake of thinking too much about things before. On a Thursday afternoon in the third week, Dottie Pierce came into the bakery with her daughter Lucille and her friend Martha Simmons. They stood at the counter looking at Clara's preserves and spoke to each other in voices calibrated precisely for Clara's ears. "I heard Carter's bought himself new boots," Dottie said. "Thinking of putting down roots." "In Red Willow Creek," Martha said, like the idea was faintly absurd. "On account of certain interests." Lucille smiled at Clara with an expression that was perfectly arranged to be unreadable. "I think it's sweet. Everyone deserves company." "Company," Dottie said and left it there. 4 cents, Clara said, setting a jar of preserves on the counter. They bought it and left. Clara wiped down the counter, then wiped it again harder. That evening she was short with William for no reason he had given her, and he bore it without complaint for about 20 minutes before he said, "You want to tell me what I did?" "You didn't do anything," she said. "Then what happened?" She looked at the floor. Nothing happened. "Clara." She looked up at him. "Why are you still here, William?" He blinked. Not a confused blink. More like a man who has been expecting a question and is now deciding which version of the true answer to give. "I told you why I came." he said. "You told me Thomas sent you. You told me you wanted to put down roots. But it's been 3 weeks, and you could be in any town in Texas right now, and instead you're sitting on a bench outside a bakery in Red Willow Creek, with a woman who half this town is laughing at, and I want to know why." She held his gaze. The real reason, not the polite one. He was quiet for a long moment. "Because in 3 weeks," he said slowly, "I have not once seen you let this town make you small." He looked at her steadily. "I have seen them try. I have seen them try every single day. And every single day, you get up and you open your bakery, and you do the work, and you don't let them see it land." His voice was level and quiet. "I've known a lot of people in my life who couldn't do that. Men twice your size who folded under half the pressure you carry like it's nothing." He paused. "That's not nothing, Clara. That's everything." "So shall Charlie." She didn't answer. She couldn't quite. "And also," he said, "your bread really is the best I've ever had." A sound came out of her that surprised them both. Half laugh, half something that wasn't quite crying, but was in the neighborhood. William smiled. That real smile, the one that changed his face. "I mean it about the bread," he said. "I know you do," she managed. They sat there a little longer than usual that evening, the town going quiet around them, and for the first time in a very long time, Clara Whitmore did not feel like she was sitting alone. The last day of the 3rd week, William came by in the morning looking like he hadn't slept. "What happened?" she said. "Caldwell," he said. He set his hat on the counter and leaned both hands on it, which was her posture, and she noticed. "He told Harlan he won't renew the contract for the livery horses if Harlan keeps me on." Clara felt cold. "That's Harlan's main income," she said. "Yes." "Caldwell's doing this because of—" She stopped. "Because of me." "Seems like." She turned away from him. She walked to the back of the bakery and stood there with her back to him for a moment, and she was very, very angry, and she did not want him to see all of it. "You should go," she said. "No." She turned around. "William, he'll ruin Harlan. He'll make it hard for you to find work anywhere in the county. You know what kind of reach he has." "I know what kind of reach he has." "Then you know you should go. Find another town. Start over somewhere Caldwell's name doesn't carry weight." "I know I should go," William said. He picked up his hat. He looked at her. "I'm not going," he said. Clara stared at him. "I gave you a month," he said. "I've got 9 days left, and I don't walk away from things with 9 days left on my word." He settled his hat on his head. "I'll talk to Harlan. Figure something out. Don't worry about that part. Don't worry about Clara." He looked at her very directly, very quietly. "Let me do this part." She thought about what she'd said to him standing beside you while you fight them not fighting for you. She thought about the difference she'd acknowledged and then immediately tried to make irrelevant. "Fine," she said. The word cost her something. "Fine." He nodded. 7 o'clock rolls tomorrow, he said. "I'll have my nickel." "I'll have the rolls," she said. He went out. Clara stood in the middle of her bakery in the morning light, flour on her hands, and everything uncertain. And she thought, "Thomas, you strange, impossible, unexpected man. Maybe you knew something I didn't. Maybe you did." On Friday morning, the Miller girl came in early. Her name was Annalie Miller, and she was 18, and getting married on Saturday, and she had spent the last 6 days in a quiet panic about the dress Clara was altering for her. Clara had been moving the seams out at the waist because Annalie had lost weight, and the bodice had gone too loose, and it was delicate work because the dress had been her grandmother's, and any mark left by the needle would be permanent. Annalie came in at 6:30 before the rolls were even out. "Is it ready?" she said. No good morning, no preamble the way young people ask things when they're too scared to be polite. "It's ready," Clara said. She brought the dress out from the back, and Annalie's face changed in that particular way faces change when something has gone exactly right. She reached out and touched the lace at the cuffs, the tucks at the waist. It's perfect, Annalie whispered. Your grandmother had good taste, Clara said. Annalie looked up at her. She was a pretty girl, small and golden-haired, the kind the town had always regarded as the right kind of woman. She looked at Clara now with something genuine in her eyes. Thank you, I mean it. She hesitated. Mr. Carter came to the church social planning meeting last night. He talked about you. Clara kept her expression still. Did he? He said you make the best bread in West Texas and that whoever built this town was lucky to have you in it. Annalie paused. Mrs. Caldwell looked like she'd bitten something sour. I like him, Annalie said simply. I think he means what he says. She paid for the dress and left. Clara pulled her rolls from the oven. At 7 o'clock, she heard boots on the front step. She had his rolls ready before he knocked. That same Friday afternoon, William and Nathan Caldwell met on the street. Clara did not see it happen. She heard about it from 3 different people before supper, each version slightly different in the details and identical in the essential facts. William Carter had stopped Nathan Caldwell on the main street hat in hand and had spoken to him quietly for about 5 minutes. And whatever he said had made Nathan Caldwell's face do something unusual, which was show genuine surprise. And at the end of the 5 minutes, Nathan had ridden away without saying anything, and William had walked back to the livery. Nobody knew what was said. When Clara asked William that evening, he looked at his hat for a moment and said, I told him the truth. Which truth? That I'm not here to cause trouble. That I'm here to work and to stay if things go the way I hope they go. That I know who he is and what he can do in this county, and I'm not afraid of it because I'm not doing anything wrong. He looked up at her. And that if he has a problem with a woman running her own business and deciding who she keeps company with, that problem is his and not hers, and I'd appreciate him keeping it to himself. Clara stared at him. You said that to Nathan Caldwell, more or less. And he just rode away. He thought about it for a minute. William settled his hat. Then he rode away. You're either very brave, she said, or very foolish. Probably some of both, he said. He's going to find a way to make that cost you. Maybe. William looked at her steadily. Worth it. She looked away. Outside, the street was going amber in the late afternoon. A dog barked somewhere far off. The air smelled like dust and dry grass and the particular wild emptiness of Texas in summer. You really mean to stay, she said. Not a question. More like a thing said out loud to hear what it sounded like. I really mean to stay, he said. She nodded once. She didn't need to say anything else. The month ended on a Saturday. William was at the bakery at 7 o'clock, the same as every other morning, hat in hand, nickel ready. Clara gave him his 2 rolls. He ate the first one on the step. He didn't leave. She watched him through the window while she worked. He sat on the bench outside with the second roll in his hand and his hat on his knee, and he didn't move for a long time, like a man doing arithmetic in his head and not liking the answer he kept coming up with. Finally, she came to the door. The month is up, she said. I know. You said you'd move on if I felt differently. I did say that. He turned his hat slowly in his hands. Do you feel differently? Clara leaned against the doorframe and looked at him and told herself she was going to be careful. She had promised herself she was going to be careful. No, she said. William looked up at her. No, I don't feel differently, she said. Which is the problem, isn't it? He was quiet for a moment. Why is it a problem? Because nothing has changed, William. Caldwell is still out there. Harlan is still under pressure. Half this town still thinks you've lost your mind, and the other half is waiting to see how long it takes before you prove them right. She met his gaze. And because I have spent 25 years building a life that belongs entirely to me, and I don't know what to do with a person who keeps showing up in it. He didn't answer right away. He picked up his hat, turned it once more, set it on his head. Can I stay another month? He said. Clara stared at him. That's it, she said. That's your answer. I don't have a better one right now, he said. but I'm working on it." She looked at him for a long moment. The morning was already heating up. Down the street she could hear the blacksmith starting his work. Somewhere a horse was unhappy about something. "One more month," she said. "And William." He looked at her. "You're going to need more than 1 nickel a day if you plan to keep eating my rolls." Something shifted in his face. That almost smile. "I've got savings," he said. "Good," she said. "Because starting tomorrow, the price goes up to 2 nickels. She went back inside. She did not let herself smile until she was safely in the back room with the flour. 2 days after the month turned over, Caldwell made his move. It didn't come through Harlan. That would have been too direct, too obvious, and Nathan Caldwell was not an obvious man. It came through the town council, which Caldwell had been the unofficial chairman of for 15 years, and which met on the first Tuesday of every month in the back room of the bank. Clara found out from Reverend Hollis, who came into the bakery on a Wednesday morning with the careful expression of a man delivering bad news. "Sit down, Clara," he said. "I don't sit down in my own bakery," she said. "What happened?" He told her. The council had passed a new ordinance. All commercial properties on Main Street were required to submit to a structural inspection by the end of the month. Any building that failed the inspection would have 30 days to make repairs or surrender the lease. "My building is solid," Clara said. "I've maintained every board in it myself." "I know that," Reverend Hollis said. "The problem is who's doing the inspecting." She looked at him. "Caldwell's cousin," he said. "Arrived from Dallas last week, being paid by the county through the council." Clara set both hands on the counter. "He's going after my building," she said. "He's going after several buildings," Hollis said carefully. "But yours is on the list." "Who else is on the list?" Hollis named 3 names. All of them were people who had at one time or another done something that irritated Nathan Caldwell. 2 of them owed him money. Clara was the only woman. "When does this inspector come?" she said. "Friday." She had 2 days. She didn't tell William that night. She told herself it was because there was nothing he could do, but that wasn't entirely true. The truth was, she didn't want to see the helpless anger in his face and feel what she'd felt when she'd seen it before, something she was still pretending not to have felt. Instead, she went home after closing and went through every record she had. Every repair bill, every lumber receipt, every letter from the county office. She laid everything on her kitchen table and went through it twice, looking for whatever Caldwell's cousin was planning to find. Then she went to the bakery at midnight with a lamp and a measuring tape and checked the rear wall clearance herself. 19 inches, 1 over the minimum. She stood in the dark and thought 1 inch. All of this, and it comes down to 1 inch. She went home and wrote everything down. She was still writing at 2 in the morning. William found out the next morning. He didn't find out from her. He found out from one of the men at the livery who had a brother on the town council, and by the time he knocked on her window at 7:30, he already knew most of it. "The inspection," he said. "I know about it," she said, not looking up. "Clara." "I'm handling it." "How?" She looked up. "I have documentation. Every repair, every structural improvement I've made in 3 years. I have the original lease. I have measurements." She set her pen down. "I am not going to let Nathan Caldwell walk in here and hand my building to his cousin without a fight." William looked at her. "What do you need?" She blinked. It was such a plain question. Not "what are you going to do?" Not "are you sure you can manage this?" Not "let me take care of it." Just "what do you need?" "I need a witness," she said after a moment. "When the inspector comes Friday, someone who can stand there and hear what is said and not be intimidated by who sent him." "I'll be here," William said. She nodded. "You might lose work over it. Caldwell will know you were here." "I'll be here," he said again. She picked her pen back up. 7 o'clock tomorrow, the price goes back to 1 nickel, she said. "Is that your thank you?" he said. "That's the closest you're going to get," she told him. He laughed, not the almost smile, the real one, and she bent over her papers to hide her face. The inspector arrived on Friday at 10 in the morning. His name was Garrett Cole, and he had the look of a man who had been given very specific instructions and intended to follow them while maintaining the appearance of impartiality. He was precise in his movements and economical in his speech, and he carried a leather case with brass fittings that looked more expensive than anything a county inspector ought to own. He was not expecting Clara to be ready. She had everything laid out on the counter: lease agreement, repair records going back 3 years. The measurements she had taken herself, written in her clear, deliberate hand, with the date and the time and her signature at the bottom. A copy of the county structural code she had obtained from Reverend Hollis, which she had read 3 times cover to cover. Cole looked at the counter and then looked at her, and for just a moment something flickered across his face that might have been respect and might have been annoyance. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "Mr. Cole," she said. "I'd like to begin with the rear wall if you don't mind. I have measurements I took myself on Wednesday night. I expect yours will match." He looked at William, who was standing near the door with his arms crossed and his face neutral. "Your husband," Cole said. "A witness," Clara said. "You'll find everything is in order. But if it isn't, I want someone present who can attest to what was found." Cole set his leather case on the counter beside her documents. He opened it. He took out his measuring equipment. He looked at her records. He spent 2 hours in that bakery. He found nothing. Not because he wasn't looking. He looked at every board, every seam, every joint in the rear wall. He measured the clearance 4 times. He checked the floor for unevenness, the ceiling for water damage, the chimney flue for deterioration. He opened the code and measured again. Clara stood at her counter and watched him and said nothing. William stood by the door and said nothing. At noon, Garrett Cole closed his leather case. "The building is sound," he said. "Thank you," Clara said. He picked up his case and looked at her for a moment, the expression of a man who has been sent to do a thing and has found himself unable to do it, not because he lacked the will, but because the woman on the other side of the counter had left him no angle. He walked out. William watched him go, then looked at Clara. "You knew he'd find nothing," he said. "I knew my building was sound," she said. "There's a difference." She began gathering her documents. "He might come back. Caldwell will find a different angle." "Probably," William said. "You're going to be ready for that one too, aren't you?" "Always have been," she said. The next angle came sooner than she expected. It was the following Monday, and it came through Dottie Pierce, who arrived with the specific energy of a woman delivering gossip she believes is doing damage. She came in alone. No Lucille, no Martha. Just Dottie and her particular smile. "I heard the inspection went well," she said. "It did," Clara said. "Good." Dottie picked up a jar of preserves and turned it in her hands. "I also heard that Nathan Caldwell is putting together an offer on the Whitmore property, the one your father owned before you. The house." She set the preserves down. "There's some question apparently about the transfer of the deed after your father passed. Whether it was all done properly." She tilted her head. "I'm sure it was. You're such a careful woman." She bought nothing. She left. Clara stood in the middle of her bakery and felt the floor shift under her. The house had been her father's. He had died 6 years ago when Clara was 19, and the lawyer who handled the estate had been old and not particularly careful, and she had signed what he put in front of her because she was 19 and grieving, and did not know that she should have read it more carefully. She had not looked at those documents in 6 years. William knew something was wrong the moment he came in that evening. She had not cried. She was behind her counter sorting receipts with a methodical, mechanical precision that meant she was not thinking about receipts at all, and when he said her name, she looked up with the expression of a person who has been somewhere far away. She told him. All of it: Dottie, the deed, her father, the lawyer, the 6 years she had spent not looking at things she should have looked at. William listened without interrupting, patient and still. "Do you still have the deed?" he said when she finished. "At the house, somewhere. We need to look at it tonight." She said. He looked at her. Yes, he said. We. She looked down at her receipts. 25 years of thinking in singular terms. I, me, mine. The word we sat in her chest like something she didn't know the weight of yet. All right, she said. Tonight. The deed was in a box under her bed, which was where she put everything important and slightly frightening that she didn't want to think about too often. They sat at her kitchen table, with it spread between them, the lamp pulled close, and read it in the quiet. She found it on page 4. A notation in the transfer clause, an outstanding balance on the property, $42, never paid because no one had told her it existed. The lawyer should have flagged it. He hadn't. Technically, on paper, the title to the house wasn't fully clean. $42, she said. That's nothing, William said quietly. On paper, it's an irregularity. A man with money and a cooperative judge can turn an irregularity into a claim. She sat back. The inspection was a distraction. He was looking for the real thing the whole time. Can you pay it? William said. I have it. I just didn't know it existed. Then go to the county clerk first thing tomorrow and pay it. Get the receipt. Clear the title before Caldwell files anything. If his cousin hasn't already. William stood up from the table. Then we go tonight. She stared at him. The office is closed. Reverend Hollis has a deacon on the council who has a key, he said, already reaching for his hat. I know where Hollis lives. I've been talking to him 3 times this week. Clara stood, folded the deed into her coat pocket. All right, Mr. Carter, she said. Let's go wake up the Reverend. They were at the county clerk's office by 10:30. The deacon's name was Amos Tate, 50 years old, and deeply unimpressed by Nathan Caldwell, which made him the most useful man in Red Willow Creek at that particular moment. He unlocked the office, found the file, looked at the irregularity notation, and made a sound in his throat. Should have been caught when the estate was settled, he said. It should have. Clara agreed. It wasn't. She paid $42 from the money sewn into her coat, lining emergency money she'd kept there since she was 19. Tate wrote the receipt, stamped it with the county seal, filed a corrected notice on the title. He did it with the calm efficiency of a man who has been waiting a long time for an opportunity to be useful. This goes in the public record tomorrow morning, he said. Official dated tonight. Be careful, Miss Whitmore, he added as they were leaving. A man doesn't stop because he loses one round. No, she said. He doesn't. They walked out into the night, the street dark and empty, and Clara walked with the receipt in her coat pocket and the feeling of solid ground under her feet for the first time in days. That's twice now, she said. Twice what? William said. Twice you've been exactly where I needed someone to be at exactly the right time. She didn't look at him when she said it. I'm not used to that. He walked beside her for a moment without answering. I reckon you'd better start getting used to it, he said. She didn't say anything to that, but she didn't argue with it either. Caldwell found out about the title correction on Wednesday. She knew because she saw him on the street at noon, and the stillness of his face when he looked at her was different from his usual controlled pleasantness. It was the stillness of a man recalibrating. He didn't stop. He didn't speak. He tipped his hat just once, the kind of tip that meant this isn't finished, and kept writing. She stood on the sidewalk and watched him go, and breathed slowly. She was tired. Tired of being a problem that needed solving by a man with too much land and too much certainty about other people's worth. Tired of running calculations about what he might try next. She had things to do. Bread to bake. Dresses to mend. A business she had built from nothing and intended to keep. She turned around and went back to work. Thursday afternoon brought a different kind of trouble from a direction she hadn't expected. A woman named Helen Marsh came into the bakery at 2 o'clock. Helen had always been kind in the way of a person who means well and doesn't always say the right thing, but is genuinely trying. She sat down at the work table without being invited, which told Clara this was not going to be a comfortable visit. People are talking, Helen said. About you and Carter. Some people are saying he brought this trouble on you. That before he came, Caldwell left you alone." Clara looked at her. "Did Caldwell leave me alone?" she said slowly. "Or did he just not have a reason to act yet?" Helen blinked. "He's been waiting for an opportunity," Clara said. "The inspection, the deed, none of that appeared because William came. It was already there. William just made it more urgent for Caldwell because a woman on her own is manageable, and a woman with someone beside her is a threat." She looked at Helen steadily. "Do you understand the difference?" "I'm just saying what people are saying," Helen said. "And I'm telling you what's actually true." Helen left. Clara stood at the work table and thought about what she'd said. A woman on her own is manageable. A woman with someone beside her is a threat. She had not known she thought that until she said it out loud. But the knowing settled something that had been unsettled in her for weeks. She told William about it that evening on the bench outside. He listened the way he always listened. "Does it bother you?" he said when she finished. "What people are saying?" "It used to," she said. "This town has been saying things about me since I was old enough for them to have opinions. I've learned to hear it and file it." She looked at the street. "What bothers me is that they're blaming you. You came here to build something, not to fight someone else's war." "Your war is interesting, though," he said. She looked at him. "I'm not being flip," he said. "I mean it. You've been outmaneuvering a man who has 40,000 acres and a county judge in his pocket with a measuring tape and $42 and a box of receipts." He looked at her with something in his face that she was running out of ways to ignore. "That's not a war I'd want to miss." She looked away. The trouble with William Carter was that he made things sound simple that she had been making complicated for years. Not because he was naive, but because he had a way of stripping a thing down to its actual shape without the extra weight of fear and habit she had been carrying so long she'd stopped noticing it. "I have something to tell you," she said. He waited. "When my father died, there was a man from the next county over, Henry Briggs. He had land and cattle, and he came calling after the estate was settled." She paused. "I told him no." "Why?" William said. "Because I'd just found out what it meant to own something myself. The bakery lease had just come available. I had the money my father left just barely enough." She looked at her hands. "Because I'd watched my mother disappear into my father's life piece by piece until there wasn't much of her left. She loved him. He wasn't a bad man. But she gave him everything, and by the end, there was nothing that was hers." A pause. "I decided I would rather be alone than lose myself like that." William didn't say anything right away. "And now," he said. She looked at him. "Now I'm not sure those are the only two options," she said. She said it carefully, testing the shape of it. "Being alone or losing yourself. I'm not sure they have to be." The town was very quiet around them. "No," William said, just as quietly. "They don't." Clara looked back at the street. "I'm not making any promises," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm just saying, I don't think you should move on." William was quiet for a long moment. "That's the best thing anyone's said to me in 4 years," he said. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh and stood up to go inside. "Don't read too much into it," she said. "No, ma'am," he said. But he was smiling when she closed the door. The following week, Caldwell played his last card. It arrived as a formal written offer slipped under the bakery door on a Tuesday morning above market value by 20%, drawn up by a lawyer in Austin. Clara read it twice. Read it again. He wasn't threatening to take it. He was offering to buy it at a price that seemed generous, which was the most dangerous kind of offer it made. Refusal looked like stubbornness. A foolish woman turning down a fair price. He didn't destroy people. He purchased them. He made the terms attractive enough that a person could call it a business decision instead of a surrender. He was betting she needed the money more than she needed to fight. He was wrong. When William came at 7 o'clock, she handed him the offer without a word. He read it, set it on the counter. "What are you going to do?" he said. "I'm going to decline," she said. "He won't like that." "No," she said. "He won't." She looked at William. "But I'm not selling my father's house, and I'm not selling this bakery to Nathan Caldwell at any price. He can offer me twice the market value, and the answer is still no." William nodded slowly. "You know what comes after no." "I've been saying no to this town my whole life," she said. "I know what comes after it. More of the same." She picked up the offer and folded it in half. "I need to write a formal response. Would you take it to his office this afternoon? You're going to hand-deliver a rejection to Nathan Caldwell. Through a representative," she said. "You'll be more effective than a letter. He'll know you read it. He'll know you were standing next to me when I wrote it." William picked up his hat and looked at her with the expression she was getting better at reading. "You are something else, Clara Whitmore," he said. "I'm a woman with a bakery and a deed and $42 worth of patience," she said. "Now finish your rolls and let me write my letter." He sat down on the step and finished his rolls. She wrote her letter. Caldwell received the refusal on Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday morning, 3 things happened. Harlan Briggs came in to say Caldwell had withdrawn the threat to cancel the livery contract. No explanation, just withdrawn. Harlan looked like a man waiting for a blow that hadn't landed yet. Then Mrs. Holt from the general store came in, bought a pie, and said while paying, "I heard you stood up to the inspection and the deed business. Good for you." Not warmly, but plainly. From Mrs. Holt in this town, that was nearly a standing ovation. Then Reverend Hollis stopped by to mention that Caldwell's cousin had quietly left on the Monday stage back to Dallas. Clara received all 3 pieces of news without expression. But that evening, when William came by, she poured 2 cups of coffee instead of 1 and set them both on the work table and sat down across from him. He looked at the cups. "Is this a celebration?" he said. "It's coffee," she said. "Don't make it something it isn't." He wrapped both hands around his mug and drank. "He'll try again," she said. "Probably," William said, "but not the same way." She turned her cup in her hands. "He's a man who changes tactics, not objectives. He wants the property. He's just going to find a different lever." "When he does," William said, "you'll be ready." "We'll be ready," she said. The word came easier this time. Not easy, but easier. William looked at her over his coffee. He didn't say anything, which was one of his better qualities. She drank her coffee. He drank his. The lamp burned low between them, and outside the street was quiet and dark, and for a little while, neither of them needed to fill the silence with anything at all. On the last day of the 4th week, 2 months now since William Carter had knocked on her door with his road-dusted hat and his brother's message, Clara was in the bakery at 5 in the morning when she heard boots on the step. Not 7 o'clock. 5. She came around the work table and opened the door. William was standing on her step with his hat in his hands, and the expression of a man who has been rehearsing something again, and this time it looked like the rehearsal might actually hold. "You're here early," she said. "I've been up since 3, he said. "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about something I needed to say, and kept trying to find the right time, and decided there is no right time, so here I am." Clara leaned against the doorframe. "It's 5 in the morning, William." "I know. The rolls aren't even in the oven yet." "I'm not here for the rolls," he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. "I'm in love with you," he said. Plain, no decoration, the way he said everything that mattered. "I've been in love with you for about 6 weeks, and I've been telling myself to wait for the right moment. But I just decided the right moment doesn't exist. So I'm telling you now at 5 in the morning with flowers still on your apron, and I don't have a speech, and I don't have much to offer you, except a man who intends to be exactly where he said he'd be every single day from here forward." He stopped, breathed. "That's it. That's all I've got." Clara stood in her doorway and looked at him. Her heart was doing something she had decided not to examine too closely. "You could have waited until 7, she said. "I know," he said. "The rolls will be ready at 7. "Clara," he said. She looked at him for another moment. This tall, serious, stubborn, impossibly steady man, standing on her step at 5 in the morning because he couldn't wait 2 more hours. "I know," she said quietly. "I know, William." She stepped back from the door. "Come in," she said. "I'll put the coffee on." He came in. He set his hat on the work table. He sat down in the chair that had, in some quiet way, neither of them had officially acknowledged become his chair over the past 2 months. And Clara Whitmore put the coffee on at 5 in the morning and thought for the first time in 25 years that the sound of someone else in her kitchen was not something to be frightened of. It was the second most peaceful sound she knew. 3 days after William said the words out loud, everything changed. Not between them. Between them, something had quietly settled the way a foundation settles after the last stone is laid. He still came at 7. She still had his rolls ready before he knocked. They still sat on the bench in the evenings, while the town cooled down. Except now there was less distance between them on the bench, and neither of them had commented on it, and neither of them intended to. What changed was Nathan Caldwell. He had been quiet for nearly 2 weeks after the rejected offer, and quiet from Nathan Caldwell meant he was thinking, which was more dangerous than when he was acting. Clara had been waiting for it. She had not told William she was waiting because she didn't want him to spend his days watching the street the way she was watching it, that particular coiled alertness that comes from knowing a blow is coming and not knowing when. The blow came on a Friday, and it didn't come from Caldwell directly. It came from his wife. Eleanor Caldwell was 43 years old and had been beautiful in her youth, and was still striking now in the particular way of a woman who has learned to use every asset with precision. She had never in the 10 years Clara had known her shown any particular opinion about Clara one way or the other. She was not cruel. She was not kind. She was simply absent from Clara's existence in the way that certain people are absent from the lives of people they consider beneath their attention. She came into the bakery at 11 in the morning alone, which was itself unusual. Eleanor Caldwell did not run errands alone. "Clara," she said. Same absence of miss as her husband. "I'd like to speak with you." "You can speak with me," Clara said. "I'm working. You're welcome to talk while I work." Eleanor glanced at the work table. She took a breath. "I want to be frank with you." "Please," Clara said. "My husband." Eleanor paused in a way that suggested the next words cost her something. "My husband has been telling people things about you, about your property, about William Carter." She looked at Clara directly. "He has been suggesting to several men in town that Carter's interest in you is not genuine, that he is here because of the property. Your father's land, specifically, there's a creek on it that's been dry for years, but people think it may not always be dry, and if it comes back, there's water rights to consider." She folded her hands. "Nathan thinks Carter knows about the creek, that is the real reason he came." Clara set down the pan she was holding. "And you're telling me this because," she said. Eleanor looked at the counter. "Because I am tired of my husband's cruelty passing for cleverness," she said quietly and precisely. "And because I have watched you run this bakery alone for 3 years, and it has never once crossed your mind to be less than you are, and I find that I respect it." The silence that followed was unusual. "Does Carter know about the creek?" Clara said. "I don't know," Eleanor said. "I don't know if the creek is even a factor in his thinking. I'm telling you what Nathan is saying, not what is true." She picked up her gloves from the counter. "What you do with it is your business." She left. Clara stood at her work table for a long moment. Then she untied her apron, hung it on the hook, and walked out the door. She found William at the livery working on a wheel rim. He looked up when she came in, read her face, and set down his tools without being asked. "What happened?" he said. She told him, all of it. Eleanor's visit, the creek, Nathan's version of why William had come. She watched his face the whole time she was telling him the way you watch a person's face when you are looking for something you hope not to find. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look evasive. He looked like a man hearing something for the first time and working out how to respond to it honestly. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "There's a creek on your father's land," he said. "A dry one," she said. "Has been for 6 years. I didn't know that," he said. He said it plain the way he said everything plain, looking at her with his clear gray eyes and no calculation in them. "Thomas never mentioned any creek. He talked about you. That's what I told you the first day, and it's still true." Clara looked at him. "I believe you," she said. Something moved in his face. "You came all the way here to tell me that. I came all the way here to ask you," she said. "And I asked. And now I believe you." She picked up her coat from where she'd set it on a barrel. "What concerns me now is what Caldwell is doing with this story. He's not just spreading gossip, he's building something." William was quiet. He picked up his tools and set them down again, a habit she had noticed meant he was thinking. "He's trying to separate us," he said. "He's trying to give you a reason to leave that makes me want you to," she said. "If I believe you're here for the land, I push you away myself. He doesn't have to do a thing." She met his gaze. "It's smart." "It would have worked on someone else," William said. "Yes," she said. "It would have." She walked back out into the afternoon. By Sunday, the story had traveled. Clara could track its progress through the town the way you track weather not by seeing the storm, but by reading the signs. The glances that were half a second too long. The conversations that stopped when she walked past. Dottie Pierce's particular smile when they passed on the sidewalk, the one that meant she had something she was enjoying knowing. At church, Reverend Hollis preached about the corrosive nature of assumption, which was either coincidence or his response to a week's worth of conversations Clara hadn't been part of. She sat in her usual pew and kept her face neutral and sang the hymns at the right moments and thought about what Caldwell was doing. He wasn't trying to take the bakery anymore. He had tried that twice through the inspection and the deed and failed both times. He wasn't trying to drive William out through threats to his livelihood. He had tried that with Harlan, and it had cost him without producing results. What he was doing now was subtler. He was trying to make her doubt. And if he couldn't make her doubt William, he would make the rest of the town doubt them both, until the accumulated weight of other people's certainty became something she couldn't carry anymore. It was the oldest kind of cruelty, the kind that didn't leave marks. After church, as she was pulling on her gloves on the front steps, Nathan Caldwell stopped beside her. "Clara," he said. She didn't turn around. "I hope Carter's been honest with you," he said, "about his reasons for being here." She turned then, looked at him steadily. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, "I've listened to you tell me what I deserve and what I should expect and what kind of man William Carter is. I've listened patiently because I was raised to be polite and because you have influence in this county, and I am not a foolish woman." She held his gaze. "But I will not listen to you tell me who William is. You don't know him. You only know what you need him to be to make your story work." She put on her second glove. "Good morning." She walked down the church steps. Behind her, Nathan Caldwell said nothing. She had learned something about him in the past 2 months. He only spoke when he thought he could win. Silence meant she had taken something from him. She kept walking. What she didn't expect was William being at the bakery when she arrived. He was on the front bench, hat on his knee, and he had clearly been there a while. When she came up the street and saw him, something tightened in her chest because she had learned to read his postures, and this one was the posture of a man who has made a decision and is waiting to say it. "You should have been at church," she said. "I was at church," he said. "In the back. I heard what you said to Caldwell on the steps." She stopped. "Were you following me?" "I was coming to walk you home from church," he said. "That's different." She looked at him. "Is it?" "Yes," he said. "Considerably." She sat down on the other end of the bench. "What did you want to say? You have your decision face on." He blinked. "My what?" "Your decision face. The one you get when you've been thinking since 3 in the morning about something, and you're going to say it whether the timing is right or not." She looked at him. "What is it?" He turned his hat in his hands. "I want to go see your father's land," he said. She stared at him. "Not because of any creek," he said quickly. "I want to see it because it's yours. Because your father built something there, and it matters to you, and I don't know it yet. And because—" He started again. "Because Caldwell is going to keep finding things to use against us as long as there are things he knows that we haven't faced together. That piece of land is one of them. I want to stand on it with you and take it off the table." Clara looked at him for a long time. "That's a strange reason to visit a piece of land," she said. "I'm a straightforward man," he said. "Sometimes straightforward is strange." She stood up. She unlocked the bakery door. She stood in the doorway. "Sunday afternoon," she said. "After I close." "I'll have the horses ready," he said. So, the land was 2 miles north of town, past the dead cottonwood, and along a fence line that her father had built himself, post by post, over the course of a summer that Clara had been 7 years old for, and remembered in fragments the sound of a mallet. Her father's voice counting the particular way. The Texas light fell long and orange in the evenings. She hadn't been out there in a year. They rode without talking much. William kept a half length behind her on the trail, letting the person who knew the land lead. When they reached the gate, she dismounted and opened it herself, and he waited, which was something she had noticed he never helped with things she was clearly capable of, unless she asked. She was thinking about how rare it was, that specific quality of waiting, without the impatience or the implication, when they crossed onto her father's land. And she felt the ground change under her feet, in the way that land you grew up on always feels different from other land. "He built the fence himself," she said. "Good fence," William said. "He wasn't a skilled man in most ways," she said. "He was a baker like me, and a reader, and not particularly suited to physical labor. But he wanted land. He wanted something that was his and his children's after him." She walked along the fence line. He taught himself to build fence from a book. William walked beside her. "How much land?" 80 acres. Mostly dry grass and scrub. There's a well, but it's low. The creek—" She paused, looked toward the western edge of the property. "It's been dry since the year he died. He used to say it would come back. He believed in it the way he believed in things he couldn't prove." She hadn't expected to feel this, the particular weight of a place that holds someone you've lost. "He sounds like a good man," William said quietly. "He was," she said. "He was flawed and sometimes difficult, and he didn't know what to do with a daughter who didn't want to be married off at 17, but he was a good man." She stopped walking. "He would have liked you." William was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. They stood on the land, and the afternoon light came down long and warm, and nothing was said for a while, and nothing needed to be. Then Clara said, "If the creek comes back, the water rights go with the deed. The deed is clean now. It's all properly mine." She looked at William. "I want you to know that. Whatever this land is worth, it's mine, and I'm not in any trouble that a man needs to rescue me from." "I know that, Clara. I want you to know that I know you know it," she said. "I want it between us as a fact, not an assumption." He held her gaze. "It's between us as a fact," he said. She nodded. She looked out over the land a while longer. "He would have liked you," she said again more quietly. "You have the same way of being patient with things you can't control." They rode back to town in the early evening, and everything was different, in the way that things are different when two people have stood together on ground that matters and said the real things rather than the polite ones. It was dark by the time they reached Main Street, and the street was not empty. It should have been empty. On a Sunday evening at this hour, Red Willow Creek's Main Street was typically quiet, people home for supper. The barber shop closed the general store dark. Instead, there were men on the sidewalk outside the saloon, and in the middle of the street there were raised voices, and as Clara and William rode closer, she could see two men in the road. One of them was Harlan, and one of them was a man she didn't recognize, and Harlan was bleeding from his lip, and the other man was saying something she couldn't make out. William pulled up his horse. That's one of Caldwell's range hands, he said. The man had Harlan by the coat. Harlan was older, 60, maybe 65, and small, and he was not fighting back, which meant he either couldn't or had decided not to. William dismounted before she could say anything. She dismounted after him. "Stay back," he said. "Don't tell me to stay back," she said. He didn't argue. He walked into the street. "Let him go," he said. The Caldwell hand looked up. He was young, mid-20s, and big in the aimless, unformed way of young men who haven't figured out yet what to do with their size. He had the particular look of someone who had been told to do something, and was going to do it regardless of who told him to stop. "This ain't your business, Carter," he said. "Harlan's my employer," William said. "That makes it my business." He stopped about 5 feet away. Close enough to be clear. Far enough to be reasonable. "What's the trouble?" "Harlan owes Mr. Caldwell money," the hand said. "I'm collecting." "Harlan can speak for himself," William said. "Harlan, do you owe Mr. Caldwell money?" Harlan, who had gone very still with the particular stillness of a man who has been frightened into quiet, said, "He says I do. I don't recall borrowing anything." "He says," William said. The hand's grip on Harlan's coat tightened. "I got paperwork." "I'd like to see it," William said. "I don't need to show you a damn thing." "No," William said. "But you'll need to show a judge. And if you mark up an old man over a debt he doesn't recognize before anyone's looked at any paperwork, that's assault. That's a jail matter." He looked at the hand steadily. "Let him go. Show the paperwork to Harlan in the morning with someone present to look at it. That's how this gets resolved." The hand looked at him, looked at Harlan, looked back at William. Something passed across his face. The calculation a young man makes when he realizes the person in front of him is not going to back down, but also isn't going to be stupid about it, and stupid is the only thing he knows how to answer. He let Harlan go. He stepped back, shot William the look that meant this isn't finished, and walked away. The men on the sidewalk outside the saloon watched him go. Nobody said anything. William went to Harlan, put a hand on his shoulder. "You all right?" "Fine," Harlan said, though he wasn't quite. "My lip." "Let's get you inside," William said. Clara was already beside them. She pressed her handkerchief against Harlan's lip without asking permission, because this wasn't a moment for formality. Harlan looked at her. "Thank you, Clara." "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank the man who got there first." Harlan looked at William. Something passed between them that wasn't words. "I know," Harlan said quietly. Later, after Harlan was inside and cleaned up and had coffee in him, Clara and William stood in the street outside the livery. "The paperwork will be fake," Clara said, "or manufactured a debt that wasn't a debt until tonight." "I know," William said. "Caldwell is escalating. He's not going after you or me anymore. He's going after people around us." "I know," he said. "He's going to keep doing this, going after Harlan or Reverend Hollis or anyone who's shown any kindness to either of us." She looked at William. "This stops being just about me. That's what he wants. He wants us to feel responsible for other people getting hurt." William was quiet. "He's going to win," Clara said, "unless we stop playing the game the way he set it up." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been reacting. Every time he does something, we respond to it. We fix what he broke and wait for the next thing." She met his gaze. "We need to stop waiting. We need to do something he can't respond to." "What are you thinking?" "Caldwell's power in this county comes from people being afraid of him, from people believing he's untouchable. All the things he's done, not one of those things would survive an honest examination by someone outside his influence." She paused. "There's a federal district office in Abilene. Land disputes, property fraud, intimidation of business owners, all of that falls under federal jurisdiction when it crosses county lines." William went very still. "You want to write to the federal office," he said. "I want to document everything," she said. "Every instance. Every date, every name. all of it in writing with signatures from witnesses willing to put their names on it. She looked at him. Caldwell controls this county. He doesn't control the federal office in Abilene. The street was quiet around them. That's a risk, William said. If it doesn't work, he'll know we tried. He'll come back harder. He's already coming back harder, she said. He beat Harlan's employee tonight. He's past subtlety. She held William's gaze. I'm not asking you to do this with me. I'm telling you what I intend to do. But I'd rather have you with me than not. William looked at her for a long moment. We're going to need those witnesses, he said. Yes, she said. Harlan will sign. Amos Tate, Reverend Hollis. He paused. Helen Marsh maybe if she's honest about what she's seen. I know 3 other business owners on Main Street who were on the inspection list, Clara said. 2 of them have been wanting to say something for months. How long to put it together? A week, maybe 10 days. William nodded slowly. Then we'd better start tomorrow, he said. The document came together in 8 days. Clara spent the first 3 going to see people individually alone without William, because she had learned that some people would say things to her that they wouldn't say in front of a man, and she wanted the full truth of what each person had experienced. The first business owner she visited was James Pettit, who ran the feed and grain store and had been on the inspection list, and whose building had been declared in need of repairs by Caldwell's cousin Repairs, that by coincidence the cousin had a contractor friend in Dallas who could perform. James Pettit opened his ledger and showed her 3 years' worth of maintenance records. I hired someone from Austin instead. Cousin left town the week after. He looked at Clara. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. The second was a widow named Frances Bell, who ran a small dress shop 2 doors from Clara's bakery, and who had received the same above-market offer Clara had received, and had accepted it because she was 67 years old and tired. She now rented her own shop space from a property management company incorporated in Dallas, whose owner was not listed publicly, but whose lawyer was the same lawyer who had drawn up Clara's rejected offer. Frances Bell sat at her work table in the shop that was no longer hers. I didn't know until after, about the company. Her hands were folded in her lap. I wouldn't have sold if I'd known. I know, Clara said. Will it do anything? Your document. I don't know, Clara said honestly. But the federal office has to know what's been happening before they can do anything about it. And right now, nobody outside this county knows anything. Frances Bell nodded slowly. I'll sign. At my age, I reckon I've got less to lose from saying the truth than from keeping it. The third was a man named Cord Delaney, who farmed outside town and who had had water rights disputes with Caldwell going back 4 years, and who said when Clara came to his door, I wondered when somebody was going to do this, and invited her in for coffee and talked for 2 hours. By the end of the week, she had 7 signatures. By the end of the 8th day with William and Reverend Hollis and Amos Tate, she had 11. The document was 12 pages long. It named dates, amounts, names, and specific actions. It described the inspection and the false debt claim against Harlan. It described Frances Bell's property sale and the shell company in Dallas. It described 4 years of water rights manipulation affecting Cord Delaney and 2 other farmers. It described the harassment of Clara's own property and business. It was not angry. It was precise and factual and dry as a legal brief, because Clara understood that a document that sounded like a complaint would be read as a complaint, and a document that read like a record would be treated like one. She and William read it together at her kitchen table on a Thursday evening. It's good, he said. It's enough to open an inquiry, she said. Maybe more. She squared the pages. I need someone to take it to Abilene. Someone who isn't from here who Caldwell can't intercept or pressure. William looked at her. I'll go, he said. She shook her head. I need you here. Caldwell will move if you leave. Then who? She paused. Thomas, she said. A silence. Your brother, William said. He owes me $11, Clara said, and considerably more than that if I'm counting. She looked at the document. He introduced us. He started this. The least he can do is ride to Abilene. William looked at her for a moment. Then slowly he smiled. Not the small one. The real one, the one that changed his face. "You're going to write to Thomas," he said. "I'm going to write to Thomas," she said. "What are you going to say?" She picked up her pen. "I'm going to say the cowboy you sent is staying. Now here's what you need to do about it." Thomas Whitmore arrived on a Thursday. He came on the afternoon stage from Abilene, which meant he had left within 2 days of getting Clara's letter, which meant the letter had landed harder than she expected. She was behind the bakery counter when Reverend Hollis came in to tell her the stage had arrived, and she untied her apron and hung it on the hook, and walked to the stage depot with her hands in her coat pockets and her face arranged into something neutral, because she did not yet know what she was going to feel when she saw him. She hadn't seen her brother in 2 years. He was standing outside the depot with a travel bag at his feet and his hat in his hands, which meant he'd taken it off the moment he saw her coming and hadn't put it back on, which was either respect or nerves or both. He was 30 years old and looked like their father around the eyes and like their mother around the mouth, and like himself everywhere else lean and weather-worn and slightly uncertain in the way of a man who knows he has something to answer for. "Clara," he said. "Thomas," she said. They looked at each other for a moment. "You look well," he said. "You look like you haven't slept on the stage," she said. "I haven't." He picked up his bag. "The cowboy I sent you. Is he—" "He's fine," she said. "He's at the livery." She turned and started walking. "Come on, I'll feed you and then we'll talk." He followed her the way younger siblings follow older ones, even when the math is the other way around. She fed him bread and cold beef and coffee, and let him eat before she said anything because she had been raised in the same house he had, and she knew that Thomas talked better on a full stomach, and that anything said to him while he was hungry had a 50% chance of being misheard as an accusation. He ate. He drank his coffee. He looked around the bakery with the careful attention of a man inventorying something he hadn't expected to be impressed by. "You built this yourself," he said. "3 years ago," she said. "It's good, Clara." "I know it is," she said. He set down his mug. "I'm sorry I haven't been here." "I know you are." She sat across from him. "That's not why I wrote." "I know," he said. "The document." He reached into his coat and produced it folded in thirds with a slight smudge on the outer page that suggested he had read it more than once. "I read it on the stage, all of it." He set it on the table. "This is serious." "Yes. You have 11 signatures." 11 people in this town who are willing to put their names on paper," she said. "There are more who wouldn't. Fear does that." Thomas turned his coffee mug in his hands exactly the way William turned his hat. She noticed it and set the observation aside. "I know someone in the federal district office," he said. "Not a close friend. A man I did a drive with 3 years ago who went into law afterward. He's in Abilene now." He looked at her. "I went to see him before I came here." Clara stared at him. "You went to the federal office before you came to see me. I wanted to know if this was actionable before I got your hopes up," he said. "And I wanted to deliver it in person rather than just mail it in case they had questions." He paused. "His name is Deputy Marshal Elias Webb." He read the document. He said it describes a pattern of conduct that his office has been trying to document in this county for 2 years, and that your account, particularly the property fraud with Mrs. Bell and the water rights manipulation, is exactly the kind of evidence they've been lacking. The bakery was very quiet. "He's going to open an inquiry," Clara said. "He's already opened it," Thomas said. "He's coming to Red Willow Creek in 10 days. Clara sat with that for a moment. 10 days. After 3 months of Caldwell moving against her like water finding cracks in stone, there was going to be a federal marshal in this town in 10 days. "Does Caldwell know?" she said. "Not yet," Thomas said. "Webb wants it that way. He wants to arrive before Caldwell has time to prepare." She looked at her brother. "Thomas?" "I know," he said. I should have come sooner. A lot sooner, she said. I know. He looked at the table. I told William about you for 2 hours because I couldn't figure out how to come myself. That was a coward's way of doing the right thing. He looked up at her. I'm sorry, Clara. For the $11 too. She looked at him for a long moment. The $11 I'm writing off, she said. The 2 years you owe me more complicated than money. He nodded. His jaw was tight in the way men's jaws get tight when they are holding something they do not know how to express. Is he good? Thomas said. Carter, is he good to you? Clara thought about a man on her front step at 5 in the morning who couldn't wait until 7. She thought about the bench outside the bakery and the document on her kitchen table and the sound of someone else's boots on her floor. Yes, she said. He is. Thomas nodded. He picked up his coffee. Good, he said. Chai. William and Thomas met that evening. Clara had been wondering how this would go. The two men had worked a cattle drive together and parted as acquaintances, and now one of them was in love with the other's sister, and the other one had essentially arranged the whole thing and then disappeared for 2 years, and there was a complicated accounting to be done between them that Clara had no intention of supervising. She introduced them in the bakery, handed them each a cup of coffee, said, I have bread to check, and went to the back room. She could hear them through the wall. The first 5 minutes were quiet, the kind of quiet that meant both men were calibrating each other, saying ordinary things in ordinary tones, and listening to what the words were built on. Then Thomas said something she couldn't quite make out, and William answered, and Thomas laughed a real laugh, not a polite one, and after that the voices relaxed. She came back out after 20 minutes. They were both leaning on the counter with their coffee, and they looked like two men who have found the beginning of something uncomplicated between them. He told me about the inspection, Thomas said when she came in. What did he leave out? Clara said. Nothing that I can tell, Thomas said. She looked at William. You told him about the deed. I told him about the deed, William said. And the street with Harlan. And the street with Harlan. And Caldwell's wife coming to the bakery. A pause. I forgot that one, William said. Of course you did, she said, and went back to her bread and heard them both laughing behind her, and allowed herself to be quietly, privately glad about it. The 10 days before Deputy Marshal Webb's arrival were the longest Clara had experienced since her father died. Caldwell was quiet again. 2 weeks of quiet now, since the incident with Harlan's employee, and the quality of this quiet was different from the earlier ones. It was the quiet of a man who has stopped moving pieces around the board because he is waiting for information which meant someone had told him or he had guessed that something was coming. Clara noticed him on the street twice. Both times he looked at her with an expression she had not seen on his face before. Not contempt, not calculation, something more careful than either of those. He knows something's happening, she told William on the 4th day. Maybe, William said. Or he's just run out of moves for now. He hasn't run out of moves, she said. He's changing approaches. She paused. I'm worried about what he might do in the next few days. If he finds out about Webb before Webb gets here, he'll start moving documents, destroying things. Can he? He's had years to build this operation, she said. He'll know what can be traced and what can't. He'll clean the things that can be. She looked at William. We need to make sure the people who signed the document know to keep their copies safe. Somewhere Caldwell wouldn't look. I'll talk to them, William said. I'll come with you, she said. Clara. I'll come with you, she said again more firmly. These are my witnesses. They trusted me. They should hear from me. He nodded. He had stopped arguing with her about these things, which she considered one of his better recent developments. They spent the next 3 days visiting each of the 11 signatories. 7 conversations went smoothly. Harlan hid his copy under a floorboard he had been meaning to fix for years and now had a reason not to. Amos Tate locked his in the county clerk's safe. Reverend Hollis sewed his into the binding of a hymn book, which seemed either extremely clever or slightly sacrilegious, and Hollis showed no sign of caring which. The eighth conversation was with Frances Bell, who sat in her rented shop and said, "I've been thinking about my property." "What about it?" Clara said. "The company that bought it. The one in Dallas." Frances folded her hands. "If an inquiry shows that the sale was conducted under fraudulent conditions, is there any possibility I might get it back?" Clara looked at her carefully. "I don't know," she said honestly. "That would depend on how the inquiry proceeds and what the marshal finds." Frances was quiet for a moment. "I want you to know," she said, "that if there's any chance at all, I want to fight for it, even if it costs me." She looked at her hands. "This shop is the only thing I have left from my husband. He built it. I can't let a man in Dallas have it because a man in this town told him to take it." Clara sat down across from her. "Then we fight for it," she said. Frances nodded. Her chin was steady. "Good," she said. On the eighth day, Caldwell moved. Not against Clara, not against William, against Thomas. Thomas had been staying at the hotel, keeping a low profile at Clara's insistence. On the eighth day, 2 men came to the hotel while he was at breakfast and told him that Nathan Caldwell wanted to see him. Not as a request, as a statement of expectation. Thomas sent back word that he was unavailable. The 2 men waited in the lobby until noon. He came to the bakery at 12:30 with the particular expression of a man who has been in enough uncomfortable situations to recognize one when it's developing. "Caldwell knows I'm here," he said. "I know," Clara said. "I saw his men at the hotel this morning. He thinks I'm the one who went to Abilene." "You are the one who went to Abilene," she said. "He doesn't know what I brought back," Thomas said. "Or he would have done more than send 2 men to sit in the lobby." He paused. "What do you want me to do?" Clara thought for a moment. "Go see him," she said. Thomas stared at her. "You want me to walk into Caldwell's office? I want you to give him nothing," she said. "Tell him you came to visit your sister. Tell him you've been working in Abilene and decided to stop through." She met his eyes. "He's going to try to find out what you know. He might offer you things. Don't take any of it. Don't tell him anything. But don't make him think you have anything to hide either." Thomas looked at her. "When did you get so good at this?" "I've been practicing," she said. William, who had been leaning against the counter through this conversation, said quietly, "I'll come with you." Thomas shook his head. "He'll be more honest with me alone. If you're there, he'll know you 2 are coordinating." He looked at his sister. 2 days. 2 days, she said. "Webb better be here in 2 days." "He said 10 days, she said. "Today is day 8. Thomas put on his hat. "All right." He paused at the door. "Clara, if this doesn't go the way we're planning—" "It'll go the way we're planning," she said. "But if it doesn't, Thomas," she said, "go." He went. Thomas came back from Caldwell's office at 3 in the afternoon. He sat down at the work table and accepted the coffee Clara poured for him without being asked. He drank half of it before he said anything. "He offered me money," Thomas said. Clara set down her mug. "How much?" William said. $200, Thomas said, "to take my sister back to Abilene with me and convince her to sell the property." He paused. He said it in the nicest possible way, like he was doing us a favor. He said Clara was a good woman, but she was getting in over her head, and he was just trying to help the situation settle down before things got difficult for everyone. "Before things got difficult," Clara repeated. His exact words. Thomas looked at her. "I told him I'd think about it." "Good," she said. "I also found out something." Thomas set down his mug. "He's been in contact with the county judge, Judge Hale. He's had conversations with Hale in the last week about a possible property seizure action. Something about unpaid county taxes on your father's land." He looked at her steadily. "Were there unpaid taxes?" Clara went cold. My father paid his taxes, she said. Every year without fail. I have his records. Do you have them for the year he died? She thought. Her father had died in late fall. Tax bills in this county went out in September and were due by December. He had died in October. I don't know, she said quietly. He was sick in October. If the bill came in late September and he was too ill to deal with it, and then he died. She stopped. I handled the estate. I paid what the lawyer told me to pay. I don't know if the lawyer knew about a tax bill that hadn't been paid yet. William said, How old would the bill be? 6 years, she said. 6 years of delinquency on a tax bill, Thomas said. A county judge with Caldwell in his pocket could use that to put a lien on the land. And a lien gives Caldwell a legal mechanism to— I know what it gives him, Clara said. She stood up. She walked to the back of the bakery. She stood there for 30 seconds with her back to both of them, letting herself feel the full weight of it, a practice she had developed over 3 months of exactly this. Letting the weight land, then putting it down, then deciding what to do next. She turned around. I need to see the tax records at the county office, she said. Tonight, Amos Tate again. It's 8 o'clock, William said. I know what time it is. Do you know where Hollis lives? I do, he said. He was already standing. Then let's go, she said. Thomas looked between them. Does this happen often? He said. Fairly often, William said, picking up his hat. You get used to it. Amos Tate was not surprised to see them. He had the expression of a man who has been expecting to be needed and is quietly relieved that the moment has arrived. He opened the county records office, found the tax ledgers going back 6 years, and set them on the table under the lamp. Clara went through the pages. Her father's parcel number, the one she had memorized at 19 because you memorized the things that were important to keep, appeared in the September ledger of the year he died. Tax bill sent. Amount owed $14.50. She went to the December ledger. Paid. December 3rd, 6 weeks after her father died. She stared at the entry. It's paid, she said. Who paid it? William said. She looked at the notation beside the entry. The estate, she said. It was paid out of the estate. She sat back. The lawyer. The same lawyer who missed the $42 notation in the deed he apparently paid the tax bill and didn't tell me. Which is exactly what he was supposed to do. It just would have been helpful to know. The relief was sharp enough to hurt. So there's no delinquency, Thomas said. There's no delinquency, she said. She looked at Amos Tate. I need a certified copy of this entry. Tonight, if that's possible. I can have it ready in 20 minutes, he said. Thank you, Mr. Tate, she said. He waved a hand. That man has been using this county's systems like they belong to him for 20 years. I am genuinely enjoying this. Deputy Marshal Elias Webb arrived on the morning of the 10th day on the early stage from Abilene, and he was nothing like what Clara had expected. He was small, not much taller than Clara herself, and neat with the contained movements of a man who has long ago made peace with being underestimated. He wore his badge inside his coat rather than outside. He carried a leather case that looked nothing like Garrett Cole's, and everything like work. He came into the bakery alone without announcement. Miss Whitmore, he said. I'm Elias Webb. I know, she said. I've been expecting you for 2 days. The stage had trouble outside of— Would you like coffee? She said. He blinked. Then something in his face relaxed. Yes, ma'am, he said. I would. She poured 2 cups, and they sat at the work table, and she told him calmly, and in order, everything that had happened in the 3 months since William Carter had knocked on her door. She put her folder of documents in front of him, organized by date, each one labeled in her clear handwriting, and she let him read. He read for a long time. When he looked up, his expression had shifted in the way she had hoped. Not surprise. Something more serious than surprise. You built this case yourself, he said. With help, she said. The 11 signatories. How do you want to handle their participation? I'd like to be present when you speak to them, she said. Not to influence what they say. So they're not alone when they say it. Webb looked at her for a moment. You understand this inquiry could take time. Weeks, possibly months. The federal process moves slowly. I know, she said. But it moves forward. That's what matters. Caldwell will know I'm here by tonight, Webb said. He'll start doing what men like him do when federal involvement appears, moving money, disposing of records, consulting lawyers. Things may get uncomfortable in the next few weeks. Things have been uncomfortable for 3 months, Clara said. I know how to manage uncomfortable. Webb almost smiled. I believe you, he said. Caldwell found out about Webb that afternoon. Clara happened to be at the bakery window when he crossed the street toward her. He walked with his usual deliberate stride, but there was something different in it. A tension in the shoulders, a forward push that wasn't in his usual smooth certainty. He came through the bakery door without knocking. Clara, he said. Mr. Caldwell, she said. What can I get you today? There is a federal marshal in this town, he said. Is there? She said. He came from your brother, he said. I know that, and I know this came from you. He put both hands on the counter, the way he always did when he was trying to look like he owned the surface he was leaning on. I want to know what you think you're doing. I think I'm running a bakery, she said. Don't. His voice was sharp in a way she hadn't heard before. I have given you every opportunity to handle this sensibly. I have made you a generous offer. I have tried repeatedly to resolve this situation in a way that was fair to everyone. Fair to everyone, she said very quietly. Frances Bell is renting the shop her husband built because of a company you incorporated in Dallas, so your name wouldn't appear on the deed. Cord Delaney hasn't had reliable water access in 4 years because of agreements you made that weren't legal. Harlan Briggs has a split lip because you sent a man to collect a debt he doesn't owe. She looked at him steadily. Which part of that is fair, Mr. Caldwell? Help me understand. The silence had edges. You don't know what you've started, he said. I know exactly what I've started, she said. I started it 12 pages ago with 11 signatures on it. She folded her hands on the counter. I'd like you to leave my bakery now. I have work to do. Nathan Caldwell looked at her for a long moment. And then, for the first time in 3 months, in 10 years, in 25 years of living in this town, he was the one who turned around and walked out. Clara stood at her counter and breathed. Her hands were perfectly steady, which surprised her slightly. She had expected to be shaking. Instead, she felt the specific clean relief of a weight leaving her arms. William had come in through the side window while Caldwell was speaking, and he had stayed near the back of the shop and listened to the whole conversation. He came out now quietly. You heard that, she said. I heard it, he said. You should have stayed out of it. I did stay out of it, he said. That was you. That was entirely you. She looked away. Her hands were shaking now very slightly, her body's way of processing what it had been holding for 3 months. William came around the counter. He put his hands over hers very lightly, just the weight of them. She let him. After a moment, she said, I've been frightened this whole time. I don't think I admitted that to myself until just now. I know, he said. He has so much power in this county. He could still do damage. Even with Webb here, a man like Caldwell doesn't fall easily. No, William said. He doesn't. A pause. But he walks out of your bakery. That's new. She looked at their hands on the counter. Yes, she said. That's new. William lifted his hands. He picked up his hat. I need to go tell Thomas that Webb settled in, and the conversation happened, he said. He's been pacing the hotel lobby since noon. Tell him to stop pacing, she said. He'll worry Harlan. I'll tell him. He moved toward the door, stopped, turned around. Clara, he said. She looked at him. When this is over, He said, "Not if when." And she heard the difference. "I want to talk about the land. My father's land. And mine," he said. "The money I've been saving. 4 years of it." He held her gaze. "I want to talk about what we could build on 80 acres with a dry creek that might not always be dry." He settled his hat on his head. "When you're ready." She looked at him for a long moment. "Ask me again in a week," she said. "I will," he said. He went out. Clara stood in her bakery in the quiet aftermath of everything that had happened that day, and she thought about a creek that had been dry for 6 years, and a man who believed in things he couldn't yet prove, and she thought about her father, who had built a fence from a book because he wanted something that was his and his children's after him. She thought about what it meant to build something. Then she tied on her apron, turned back to her work table, and went to work. The week William had asked for passed, and he didn't ask again, not because he had forgotten she could see it in the way he looked at her, sometimes a steady question in his gray eyes that he was too patient to press. He was giving her space the same way he always did, not by pulling back, but by standing exactly where he was and letting her come to him. She was thinking about it, though. When she rolled the morning dough, when she balanced the account books at night, when she lay awake at 3 a.m, in the quiet of Red Willow Creek. The inquiry was moving. Webb had interviewed 9 of the 11 signatories, and the accounts were consistent, which he said was significant. 9 people who barely knew each other telling the same story. He had subpoenaed the Dallas Property Company records. The company had responded through a lawyer, which Webb said was itself informative. Caldwell had gone quiet in the way of a man who is letting lawyers speak for him. It should have felt like winning. It felt like waiting. On the 9th day after she told William to ask her again in a week, he came in at 7 o'clock with his nickel, and she handed him his rolls, and he sat on the front step and ate the first one, same as always, and she watched him through the window, same as always, and she made her decision. She came to the door. "Ask me," she said. He turned around, roll still in his hand. "Right now," he said. "Right now," she said. He stood up. He dusted his hands on his coat. He looked at her with his clear, steady eyes, and he said, "What could we build on 80 acres with a dry creek that might not always be dry?" "A ranch," she said. "Cattle, maybe. Horses. A kitchen big enough for 2 people who both know how to use it." He was very still. "You said 2 people," he said. "I did," she said. He let out a slow breath. "Clara, I'm not finished," she said. "The bakery stays. I'm not giving up the bakery. Whatever we build out there, this stays mine here, open the way it's always been." "I know that," he said. "I'm also not getting married in a hurry," she said. "I've waited 25 years, and I can wait a little longer to do it right." "I'm not in a hurry," he said. She looked at him. "You rode 4 days because my brother cried by a campfire." "That's not a hurry," he said. "That's a decision." She almost smiled. "There's a difference." "Considerable difference," he said. She stepped back from the doorway. "Come in," she said. "We have things to talk about." He came in. He set his half-eaten roll on the counter. He sat down in his chair. And for the next hour, while the town of Red Willow Creek went about its morning outside, Clara Whitmore and William Carter talked about what they were going to build. It was Thomas who told them about Caldwell's countermove. He came in on a Tuesday 3 weeks into Webb's inquiry with the look of a man who has just received information he doesn't want to deliver. "Sit down," he said to Clara. "I don't sit down in my own bakery," she said. "I know," he said. "Sit down anyway." She sat down. "Caldwell's lawyer filed a motion this morning," Thomas said. "In county court, Judge Hale." She had known something was coming. She had felt it in the quality of Caldwell's silence for the past week, not the silence of a man who was beaten, but the silence of a man who had found a new board to move. "What motion?" she said. "He's not going after your property directly," Thomas said. "He's filing a defamation action against you and against Webb and against 4 of the signatories on your document. He's claiming that the statements in the document constitute false and malicious accusations intended to damage his reputation. The word defamation sat in the room like something with weight. "He's suing me," Clara said. "In county court," Thomas said. "In front of Judge Hale, who Caldwell has been having private conversations with," she said, which is itself a problem that Webb now knows about. "Webb knows," Thomas said. "He's filing an objection to jurisdiction arguing the defamation claim is intended to interfere with a federal inquiry and should be moved to federal court." He paused. "But that takes time. Hale could schedule a hearing before the motion is resolved." "When's the hearing?" Clara said. 2 weeks, Thomas said. William, who had been standing near the door, said, "What's the exposure?" Thomas looked at him. "If Hale rules for Caldwell in county court, he could impose a financial penalty severe enough to threaten the bakery, or the land." The room was quiet. Clara sat with her hands flat on the table and thought about everything she had done in the past 3 months, the documentation, the witnesses, the midnight trips to the county office, the $42 Webb arriving on the morning stage with his badge inside his coat. And she thought about how a man with enough resources never runs out of boards to move. "He's trying to exhaust us," she said. "If he can't take the property, he'll drain the resources we'd use to fight him, force us into legal defense costs we can't afford." "That's what his lawyer's doing, yes?" Thomas said. "Can we afford it?" William asked her quietly. She thought about her account books. "If the legal costs are steep and the hearing goes badly not, and keep the bakery running too." William nodded slowly. "Then we need to make sure the hearing doesn't go badly. We need it not to happen at all," Thomas said. "Or at least not in Hale's court." Clara looked at her brother. "Webb's jurisdictional objection, how strong is it?" "Strong enough," Thomas said, "if he can get it in front of a federal judge before Hale schedules the hearing." "How long?" "A week. Maybe less if Webb pushes it." "Then Webb needs to push it," she said. She stood up. "I'm going to go see him now." "Clara," Thomas said. "I know," she said. "I know it might not work. I know Hale might schedule anyway. I know Caldwell has more resources and more patience potentially." She picked up her coat. "But I'm not going to sit in my bakery and wait to see what happens. I haven't done that yet, and I'm not starting now." She went out. Behind her, she heard Thomas say to William, "Has she always been like this?" And William say, "I think she's been like this her whole life. This town just wasn't paying attention." Done. Webb pushed it. Clara sat in his temporary office at the hotel, which he had converted into a workspace with a desk and 3 stacks of folders, and she watched him write the jurisdictional objection in 30 minutes in the precise economical hand of a man who has written enough of these to do them fast. "How confident are you?" she said. "Confident enough to file it today," he said, still writing. "The defamation claim is transparently retaliatory. It's filed in direct response to a federal inquiry and names the same parties whose testimony is central to that inquiry. Any federal judge with a clear docket will see that immediately." "Any federal judge," she said. "How's the docket?" He paused, writing, looked at her. "That is the question," he said. She looked at the map on the wall. "What else can we do while we wait?" "We continue the inquiry," he said. "We finish the remaining interviews. We get the Dallas property records, which are due by end of month." He paused. "And honestly, the best thing you can do is go open your bakery and run it the same way you've run it every day for 3 years. Caldwell's strategy depends on you looking like someone who has something to hide. Every day you open that door and bake that bread and serve this town is evidence to the contrary." Clara thought about that. "Open the bakery," she said. "Open the bakery," he said. She stood up. "Mr. Webb, thank you. Not just for filing today, for coming here in the first place, for taking this seriously." He set down his pen. "Miss Whitmore, in 2 years of trying to build a case against Nathan Caldwell, I had cooperation from exactly one person in this county who wasn't already protected from him by money or distance." He looked at her steadily. "You built me 12 pages with 11 signatures. I should be thanking you." She went back to the bakery. She opened it. She baked her bread. The federal court granted Webb's jurisdictional motion on a Thursday. The defamation case was moved out of Judge Hale's county court and into the federal district, which had a different judge and a different set of expectations, and which Nathan Caldwell's lawyers had not had time to influence. Hale's scheduled hearing was canceled. Clara found out from Amos Tate, who came into the bakery at 9 in the morning, with the barely contained excitement of a man who has been waiting 20 years for something and has just seen the first sign of it arriving. "It's moved," he said, federally. "Hale's out of it." Clara set down the pan she was holding. "Officially," she said. "Officially, filed this morning. Hale received the notice an hour ago." She stood at her counter for a moment. "All right," she said. Amos Tate looked at her. "That's it?" "All right." "The work isn't finished," she said. "The defamation case is still pending. The inquiry is ongoing. Caldwell is still in this county." She looked at him. "But today is a good day." "It is a good day," he agreed. She poured him coffee, gave him a roll, and let him eat with the satisfaction of a man who has done something he's proud of. After he left, she stood in the middle of her bakery and allowed herself 30 seconds of something she rarely permitted herself: pure, uncomplicated relief. Then she went back to work. William found out at noon. He came in through the side window with the expression she had come to recognize, the one he wore when something had happened that he had decided not to react to until he knew what she thought. "You heard," she said. "Harlan heard from Amos," he said. "It's true. It's true." He let out a slow breath, not theatrical, a real one. The breath of a man who has been holding tension in his chest for weeks and is releasing it carefully because he still doesn't entirely trust the ground. "It doesn't end it," she said. "I know," he said. "Caldwell will appeal or find another angle or both. This bought us time and ground, not a conclusion." "I know all that," he said. "Can I be glad about today anyway?" She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "So can I." He smiled, the real one. She handed him a roll. He ate it standing at the counter, and they didn't say much else, but the quiet between them was different from what it had been 3 months ago. Not the careful quiet of two people who don't yet know what they are to each other, but the settled quiet of two people who do. Three days after the jurisdictional ruling, Eleanor Caldwell came back to the bakery. She came in differently this time. She stood at the counter without the careful, composed look of a woman on a mission. She looked tired. And something under the tired looked like a decision that had been a long time arriving. "I need to tell you something," she said. "All right," Clara said. "Nathan is meeting with his lawyers today about the federal case," Eleanor said. "He is more worried than he is showing publicly. The Dallas records are going to be a problem for him. The water rights documentation is going to be a problem." She paused. "I want you to know that because I think you need to understand how seriously he is taking this, even if he doesn't look like it." "Why are you telling me this?" Clara said carefully. Eleanor looked at the counter. "Because I have been married to that man for 20 years, she said, "and I have watched him do things to people in this town that I told myself were not my concern, that were business." She looked up. "Frances Bell was my friend. I watched her lose that shop. I told myself I didn't know what Nathan had done, even though I did know." Her voice was steady, but her hands were not entirely. "I don't want to watch him do it to you." "I'm not asking for anything," Eleanor said. "I'm not asking you to protect me or say anything in my favor. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this town who has been quiet is on his side." She picked up her gloves. "I'll go." "Mrs. Caldwell," Clara said. Eleanor looked back. "Thank you," Clara said. "For the first time you came, and for now." She paused. "I hope things get easier for you. After." Eleanor looked at her for a moment. Something on her face that wasn't quite gratitude and wasn't quite relief, but was more complicated and more honest than either. "I hope so too," she said. She left. Clara stood at her counter and thought about the particular loneliness of a woman who has made choices she can't unmake and is only now beginning to count the cost. She thought about it without pity and without satisfaction, just with the plain recognition of one person for another. Then Dottie Pierce came in for preserves, and the morning continued. The federal hearing on the defamation case was scheduled for 6 weeks out, which Webb said was fast for a federal calendar. In the 5 weeks that followed the jurisdictional ruling, 3 things happened that Clara would remember for the rest of her life. The first was that Frances Bell received a letter from the federal inquiry team informing her that the circumstances of her property sale were under formal investigation with a probable outcome of reversal. Frances came to the bakery with the letter and sat down at the work table and cried quietly for about 5 minutes, and Clara sat across from her and said nothing, because sometimes nothing was the correct thing to say. Then Frances dried her eyes and said, "Do you think I'll get it back?" And Clara said honestly, "I don't know, but someone is fighting for it now." And Frances folded the letter and put it in her coat pocket and said, "Good," and bought 2 pies and left. The second was that Cord Delaney came into town one morning and stood at the counter and said, "I got water again, full flow for the first time in 3 years." He had the expression of a man who doesn't quite trust things going right. Webb's people sent a letter to the neighboring property. They stopped blocking the flow. He looked at Clara. "Thank you." "You signed your name," she said. That's what made it work. The third thing was William Carter asking Clara Whitmore to marry him. He did not do it in the bakery. He did not do it at 5 in the morning or with a rehearsed speech. He did it on her father's land on a Sunday afternoon in late September, when the Texas light was coming down gold through the dry grass, standing by the fence her father had built from a book, and he said, "I know we agreed we weren't in a hurry, but I want to ask anyway, because I want you to know that's where this is going on my end whenever you're ready." Clara looked at the fence line, at the dry creek bed on the western edge, where the creek her father believed in still hadn't come back, but where the ground Cord Delaney had told her recently was showing signs of moisture in the subsoil that hadn't been there in years. "Yes," she said. William looked at her. "Not next month," she said. "Not until the federal case is settled and the inquiry is finished, and I know we're standing on solid ground. But yes." She met his eyes. "Yes, William." He didn't say anything for a moment. "That's all you've got," she said. "I'm working on it," he said. She laughed. The real kind, the kind that had been quiet inside her for a long time, and was now finding its way out more often, like water returning to ground that needed it. He reached over and took her hand, and she held his, and they stood on her father's land, in the September light, and neither of them needed to say anything else. The federal hearing happened on a cold morning in October. Webb had told them they didn't need to attend, but Clara went anyway, and William went with her, and Thomas, who had stayed in Red Willow Creek far longer than he had planned, and showed no signs of leaving, went too. They sat in the back of the federal courtroom in Abilene. Caldwell was at the front with 2 lawyers, and the rigid composure of a man who has not stopped being powerful just because power is for the first time in a long time contested. He saw them when he turned around. He looked at Clara for a moment. This woman in the back of a federal courtroom, with her cowboy and her brother hands folded in her lap, back straight, face steady, and something in his expression shifted. Not defeat, not that, but something. The federal judge was a woman named Harriet Moss, which Clara had not known until that morning, and which moved her unexpectedly. Judge Moss came in with the efficient, no-nonsense demeanor of someone with a full docket and no patience for wasted time. She had read the briefs. She said so at the outset. She had questions. She asked Caldwell's lawyer why a defamation complaint had been filed in county court, when the alleged defamation concerned statements made to a federal investigator. The lawyer's answer took 4 minutes and said very little. She asked Webb's counterpart, a sharp-faced young woman from the federal district attorney's office, what the inquiry had found regarding the Dallas property company. The young woman's answer took 2 minutes and said a great deal. Judge Moss looked at her papers. "The defamation complaint is dismissed without prejudice," she said. "The statements in question are protected as part of an ongoing federal inquiry. Refiling in any venue while the inquiry is active will be treated as obstruction." She looked up. "Any questions?" Caldwell's lawyer started to speak. "That was rhetorical," Judge Moss said. "We're adjourned. 11 minutes, total." Clara sat in the back of the courtroom while the room reorganized itself around her, and she did not move for a moment, because the thing she was feeling was too large to move through quickly. William put his hand over hers. "It's over," Thomas said quietly. "The case is dismissed," she said. "The inquiry is still going." "The inquiry is still going," William agreed. "But this part is over." She nodded. She looked at the front of the room where Caldwell and his lawyers were in a tight, quiet consultation. He had not looked at her again since that first moment. He would not look at her again like that, she thought. Not with that particular calculation in his eyes that said she was a problem to be managed. She was no longer a problem to be managed. She stood up. Thomas and William stood with her. They walked out of the federal courtroom into the cold October air, and Clara stood on the steps with the sky very blue above Abilene and thought my father would have liked this day. "What do you want to do?" William said. She thought about it. "I want to go home," she said. "I want to open the bakery tomorrow and make my rolls and have Reverend Hollis come by and buy his pie and have Mrs. Holt maybe come in and not say very much, but nod at me the way she started nodding, and I want to sit on the bench outside in the afternoon with you and watch the town go by." She looked at him. "That's what I want." "That sounds right to me," he said. "It's going to take a long time," she said. "The inquiry, Caldwell finding new angles, building what we talked about on the land, all of it." "I know," he said. "You're still staying," she said. "Not a question." "I said I was going to be where I said I'd be every day," he said. "I meant it." Thomas, who had been listening with the expression of a man who has found his way back to something he didn't know how to leave again, said, "I might stay a while longer, if that's all right." Clara looked at her brother. That road-worn face, their father around the eyes, the look of a man who had been trying to find his way back here for 2 years. "You're going to have to pay me back the $11, she said. "I have the $11, he said. "Then you can stay," she said. They went home. The inquiry concluded in January. Webb came himself on the morning stage. He sat at Clara's work table with his coffee and told her that the investigation into Nathan Caldwell's conduct had produced sufficient evidence for federal charges on 4 counts: property fraud, obstruction of water rights, and conspiracy to defraud. The Dallas Property Company had been dissolved and its assets frozen. Frances Bell had received formal notice that her property transfer was under review with a probable outcome of reversal. When he finished, he said, "You did this, Miss Whitmore. 12 pages and 11 signatures. 11 people in this town were willing to say the truth out loud," she said. "That's what started it." "Yes," he said. "And you made it possible for them to say it." He left. Clara stood in her bakery in January light and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not relief, not the clean release of a weight, but something quieter and more permanent. The particular feeling of ground that is solid all the way down. She and William were married in March. They were married in Reverend Hollis's church on a Saturday, and the church was full, which surprised her and didn't surprise William, who had been paying closer attention to how the town had been shifting for months. Thomas stood up with William. Frances Bell stood up with Clara in a dress Clara had altered for her and refused payment for. Annalie Miller, 6 months married and quietly expecting, sat in the 3rd row and cried the way happy young women cry at weddings they believe in. Harlan sat in the back with Amos Tate, both men with the dignified, slightly misty expression of those who feel things deeply and consider it important not to show it. Even Dottie Pierce was there. She sat in the middle pews with her hands in her lap, and the expression of a woman who has decided, at least for today, not to have an opinion. It was the closest thing to goodwill Clara had ever seen from her, and she decided to accept it without qualification. Clara wore a dress she had made herself over 6 Sundays in the blue she had always liked and never let herself wear, because blue was a color for women who were certain of something. She was certain now. It fit her the way clothes fit a woman who has made peace with herself exactly right in the way of something that belongs. When Reverend Hollis asked William if he took this woman, William said, "I do," before the full question was finished, which made someone in the third row laugh, which made Clara almost lose her composure. That was the closest she came to crying until later. When Reverend Hollis asked Clara, she said, "I do," plainly and clearly, the way she said everything that mattered. William put on her ring, a thin band of silver he had bought in Abilene on the day of the federal hearing, because he had not wanted to wait any longer to have it ready. And he took her hand, and she held his. They built the ranch that summer. Not fast, that was never how it was built. William knew cattle, Clara knew accounts. Thomas stayed and turned out to have a gift for horses that nobody including Thomas had known about. Harlan contributed advice constantly, and at a rate inversely proportional to how much he was asked. The creek came back in August, not with any announcement. One morning Clara was out on the land, and she saw it a thin line of water at the bottom of the bed, catching the early light moving. She stood and watched it for a long time. Her father had believed it would come back. She had not known she believed it too, until she saw it, and felt something in her chest that was bigger than the water warranted. She went back to the house where William was at the kitchen table with his coffee and the morning ledger, and she said, "The creek's back." He looked up. He was quiet for a moment. "Your father knew," he said. "He knew," she said. She sat down across from him at the table, and he poured her coffee the way he had started doing, without being asked, with the familiarity of a man who knows what the person across from him takes and how much. And they sat together in the morning quiet of a house that was theirs, on land, that was theirs in a life they had built from a stranger's knock on a bakery door, and a brother's campfire story, and 25 years of a woman who refused to be made small. The bakery on Main Street still opened at 7. The sign still read, "Whitmore's." In the clean painted letters she had painted herself on a Tuesday morning years ago. She still had his rolls ready before he knocked. But he didn't knock anymore. He had a key. Some mornings he came in early with her, and they worked side by side in the quiet before the town woke up, and she told him when to turn the loaves, and he told her when the coffee was ready and the bread rose the same as it always had. And Clara Whitmore, who had spent 25 years learning to hear the sounds that hurt her and file them away behind a wall she was proud of and needed, and had built brick by careful brick, found in the end that a wall with a door in it was stronger than a wall without one. Because a wall that lets someone in is not a wall that has been breached. It is a wall that has been trusted. And trust, she had learned, was not the opposite of strength. It was the best proof of it.